to prepare for it. And he is basically saying that Sinopharm is effective, which is going to be the largest sector of the population is going to be vaccinated by Sinopharm. We have 400,000 people who are going to be vaccinated now with Sinopharm, and we are going to have more vaccines, ordered from China, but we also are going to have other vaccines, probably Johnson & Johnson in Trinidad and Tobago, and probably Pfizer, which will be used for the opening of school with the younger adults and children in this society, okay? So I want to go now to the MP for Couva South, Mr. Rudy Indarsingh, and we will begin a conversation with him now. Could we go to that? Morning.
A pleasure to be on your program, A Brighter Morning with Bhoe.
I'm glad to see you, Rudy. How are you going? You're looking well.
Yes, I am glad to see you. Hanging in here, fulfilling my constituency work and family duties, and balancing it with general life in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, it's a tough time for anybody, but tell me from an MP's point of view. I mean, I've been there, but I've not had the opportunity to be in a situation like this with COVID. The COVID was very much there at the end of my tenure as an MP, and I know that it was an issue, and it was becoming more and more an issue. It is a very big issue now, not only with the raging COVID in Trinidad and Tobago, the continuing infections, the deaths, but also with the pending and likely entry of the Delta variant in Trinidad and Tobago. How are you coping as an MP?
Well, it is very challenging, as you would know, when you have to fulfill the requests of constituents who from time to time have indicated to you that they lost their jobs even before COVID, during COVID, and they were having challenges in terms of providing what we would call bread and butter on the table. And the resources as a member of parliament is limited, but you have to work with the stakeholders within the community and so on. And I could remember within the first lockdown period, we were able to raise approximately 2,500 hampers for distribution within the geography of Couva South. We have continued to do this even in this period. I could recollect last night getting a text from a person living in Freeport. I'll generalize the area, where she indicated to me that her family is under tremendous pressure without food and so on. And I gave her the commitment that at some point in time today, our office will reach out to her to provide some kind of what we would call temporary support. It cannot be permanent based on the resources that are at our disposal. But at the end of the day, too, as you would know, the closure of plants on the Point Lisas Industrial Estate, also the closure of Petrotrin Well, the closure of Caroni 1975 Limited, and the all-around downturn in the economy of the country has impacted upon the socio-economic stability of not only Couva South, but throughout Trinidad and Tobago. The recent statistics that came out from the reports that were laid by the Minister of Finance after he had to be forced through the judicial system to lay the NIB reports, because we do not have up-to-date statistics in terms of the true level of unemployment. We have to go by what the NIBTT's report has indicated. Approximately over 115,000 persons have fell off what we would call the labor market in Trinidad and Tobago. So The state of play is very challenging, but we have to continue to display leadership in our respective constituencies, work with not only ourselves, but the business community, stakeholders, and so on, individuals from time to time, also extend their charitable and humanitarian input into serving the constituents of Couva South.
The stresses are much worse now given the COVID pandemic. What are you seeing in the constituency now, in your constituency, based on your moving with people and they're coming to you, etc., that is different and worse than it was before?
Well, as I said, the question, well, I've already outlined the unemployment issue. The
So
issue
employment
of
is an issue.
a big issue.
Right, that is a big issue. Food on the table is an issue.
Food on the table, the provision of books and what we would call to devices, that has also been a challenge, and the whole concept of online learning. And up till today, we are hearing about the opening of schools in September, but we do not know where we stand as a country and as a society. The Ministry of Education was supposed to procure computers, devices for children who were unable to log on, who did not have devices. In fact, we were told approximately 8,000 school children never logged on to what we would call the virtual learning process in the country. We do not know up till today where the Ministry of Education is in terms of with the distribution of these devices. I could tell you from a statistical point of view, I provided to the Ministry of Education where over 1,500 school children were without devices in the constituency of Couva South, because we have 14 primary schools and we have 3 secondary schools existing within the constituency of Couva South. So the whole issue of the virtual learning environment continues to be a challenge. Even parents have indicated to me, MP, Rudy, whatever they would call me, we do not have the resources to deal with the provision of Wi-Fi and so on. And that brings me to the very important point. I could remember the Minister of Finance in his budget presentation indicating that I cannot recollect the exact sum, but the government was going to provide Wi-Fi devices and hotspots and upgrade the bandwidth and so on throughout Trinidad and Tobago. And we really have not heard from the Minister of Finance in this particular issue. There was a Ministry of Public Administration and Digital Transformation. The government recently, through the Prime Minister, split the ministry and appointed a minister with the responsibility for digital transformation. But since his appointment, we have not heard anything concrete, anything innovative, anything creative that will give us a sense of hope, especially the school children and their parents who are looking forward, I think, to something definitive from the government about the opening of the school term in September of 2021. I myself have 2 children who have continued to deal with online classes in the home environment, and it has been very challenging for one who is currently writing her lower 6 exam from a key point of view, and also my eldest daughter who has completed her year 1 in university studies and so on. And also,
you have a daughter who won a national scholarship, didn't you?
Yes, Dr. Tiwari.
Yes, so the education is very important to you personally, and it's important to your constituents as well.
Education has always been something that is near and dear, not only to myself as a parent, but I think that all citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, they always want to see
their children do
education
better.
System that is benefiting all and sundry. and
Yeah.
sad to say that we are suffering from what I would call a clear, definitive direction on where we are heading, whether it is will be a total online environment, a hybrid of virtual classes and physical classes, where we are from an opening of school in September. I heard the Prime Minister indicated that from a vaccination point of view, the government is exploring the acquisition or procurement of Pfizer vaccines that will be used for the vaccination of children within
would you
the primary school and secondary school.
would you be in favor of opening schools in September if children were not vaccinated or could not be vaccinated?
Well, again, that will be dependent upon the guidance that the Office of the CMOH and the professionals from a health point of view, the doctors and, as we would say, the science. We have been hearing about the possible entry into Trinidad and Tobago of the Delta variant and so on.
You could bet your last dollar that it's inevitable that it will be here if it is not here already. And this has nothing to do with science. It just has to do with the fact that you know if the virus is somewhere near to you, and the United States is very near, and I'm sure it's elsewhere in the Caribbean, it's going to get here.
I am sure, and this is why I'm saying that the whole process has to be balanced, and if the government does not procure the vaccines for the well-being of the children in the secondary school system, and based on the cases as we get closer to September, we are already virtually at the end of July and so on, I may be a bit hesitant as it relates to the full-fledged opening of the school environment. Probably it needs to be explored about the standard 4s and 5 in the primary school system, and probably the form 4, 5, and 6 within the secondary school system and so on. These are the things that, and you see, this is the time for the government to be engaging the stakeholders, the tutor, the National Parent Teacher Association, and so on.
I get the impression that you're saying, first of all, that the government is not clear and they are not giving clarity to the population.
The government.
Secondly, you are saying
well, the government.
Go
ahead.
No, the second thing you are saying is that there is no precision about what they are going to do. Not only is there no clarity, but there is no precision. And you are also saying that your position is that you can't see more than a limited opening of school in September if we do not get children vaccinated. I got that impression from you.
Well, yes, sir, I would. That is my personal position that I'm taking here this morning. It has nothing to do with a collective or party's decision, but I'm speaking in the context of if the children are not vaccinated, then you may want to deal with only the school population from an examination point of view, whether it is the SEA or the CAPE or the CSEC. At the end of the day, the government has not been clear from day one. This is a government that failed to take on board that this issue about the virus was existing in September, as early as September of 2019. Even in the parliamentary process, they did not seek the importance of debating, of putting it in the public domain on 5 occasions. The opposition raised it in both houses of parliament. It was not deemed to be a matter of urgent public importance. And today, we have a situation where 1,043 persons have died as a result of this coronavirus in Trinidad and Tobago. And this is something that needs to be properly ventilated, because at the end of the day, we need going forward to deal with the persons who will become positive cases, how it will impact upon our healthcare system. We need to know what is causing the deaths in the ICU, the intensive care units across the public health care system in Trinidad and Tobago and so on. And this information and the data is not being provided to us from.
The opposition leader and the opposition has been calling for a commission of inquiry into the management of COVID. What do you think would be the value of that? What would it yield?
Well, I think that the value of it will always provide the necessary insight into what has happened since, I would say, January of 2020 into where we are now and where we need to go. We need to know what has gone wrong in terms of what has caused deaths in the ICU, the high dependency unit, what the causes, what we need to do from a beefing up our healthcare system in terms of bed space, in terms of equipment, in terms of planning for another possible pandemic and so on. These are things that you need a commission of inquiry for. I would support a commission of inquiry in terms of going forward, in terms of strategic planning and leadership. At the end of the day, this was in our society. Our Minister of Health scoffed, he laughed, he was very dismissive of whether Trinidad and Tobago would have been impacted upon with the coronavirus. And I could recollect him telling, I think, a television talk show host, where he said there was the remote possibility of Trinidad and Tobago being impacted upon by the coronavirus. And I am saying, and will continue to say to the government of Trinidad and Tobago, we all have a responsibility in this, that you need strategic thinking, you need proactive planning and leadership when you are faced with a situation like this. And any government that has the responsibility of leading a society, when they get into office, and I'm sure you have political experience, you have cabinet experience and so on, you would agree with me that you cannot think today for today in terms of how you are governing a country. You have to take policy positions, you have to take action that will have immediate, medium-term and long-term implications and repercussions for a country's well-being.
So your summary position is that the government has not handled the COVID pandemic well, and we need an investigation to determine what the facts are, what went wrong, etc., so that we can have that as the information going forward into any situation that we might be in. What about the vaccination drive that is going on now, mass vaccination drive? Have you been encouraging your constituents to get the vaccine?
In fact, yes, that has been clearly demonstrated, and I think that not only myself as a member of parliament, but all my colleagues, the opposition leader and my colleagues have been encouraging constituents to take advantage of the vaccines that are available to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And within recent times, you know where the geography of the Couva South constituency office is. It is located virtually next to being the neighbor of the Couva Point Lisa of Commerce. And we supported that mass vaccination drive that was undertaken by the Couva Point Lisa's Chamber of Commerce. In fact, we gave the Couva South Hall, because when we saw the situation, the scenario, the fiasco, the bungling that occurred outside of the Couva District Health Facility, when the minister undertook the Ministry of Health public vaccination, and there was people standing in the rain a morning, no seating accommodation, no toilet facilities, and so on. We provided that enabling environment through the Couva South multipurpose hall. I have, through my staff, we have been calling the persons on our database, encouraging them to take advantage of the vaccines that have been provided through the Couva Point Lisa's Chamber of Commerce initiative, and it has borne fruit, I could say this very clearly.
What about the opening up of the economy by the government. Are you satisfied with that? And what would you say should have been done differently, or what would you do differently?
Well, the opening of the economy is something that, again, has had to be considered in the context of the amount of cases and how it was occurring on a daily basis and so on. At the end of the day, the government has been pursuing and clamoring, and now you have Minister Indarsingh virtually in your face telling you the importance of vaccination. But the government should have realized that since the pandemic began and we were late off the blocks or in the starting gates, as we would say, we failed miserably. In fact, the government did not even engage in what we would call the global diplomacy that was taking place as it relates to the procurement and acquisition of vaccines. Even
No,
I
well,
could recollect that a private entity was willing to use its monies to bring in or procure Pfizer vaccines, and this was turned down by the government and so on.
no, but
We should have had vaccines in Trinidad and Tobago probably towards the end of December or the last quarter of 2020. And today we would have been in a better place as it
well,
relates towards realization of herd immunity and
well, Rudy,
opening up of the...
we've established that you think that the government handled the situation badly, and that we need an investigation to find out what the facts are and where they went wrong. So we are at that position. But right now, we are opening up the economy and mass vaccination, and the government is pushing that. You are correct. Are you satisfied with what is happening going forward, and what would you do differently? Let's focus on where we are, because we have established what the situation is in the past and what your position on that is, and we're very clear on that. As we open up the workplace, do you think we've opened up enough? Do you think that we should open up more? Is the mass vaccination taking place at a rate that is reasonable? And what does it say about how we should go forward?
Well, in terms of where we are from a Caribbean point of view, if we look at the statistics, our mass vaccination initiative, I think that we are still at the lowest rate in the English-speaking Caribbean. Then I do not know what is the level of hesitancy as it relates to accepting the Sinopharm vaccine, because there's a certain percentage of the population of Trinidad and Tobago. We have relatives in, especially in Canada and Europe and so on to a lesser extent, where it has been indicated that the Sinopharm vaccine that is being administered in Trinidad and Tobago may not be accepted for travel purposes. So this may be impacting upon persons' hesitancy to accept it or take it. And this begs the question, what is the government doing what is the government pursuing from a diplomacy point of view, probably through CARICOM and so on, to give a certain level of comfort to our citizens that if you take the Sinopharm vaccine, that you will be able to enter into Canada or into Europe for trade.
So this is one of the things that you would do differently. You would engage in international diplomacy to make sure that our citizens would be able to travel to wherever they want to go.
I think the reality is that we have quite a substantial amount of persons in this country who have relatives in Canada and in Europe and so on. So I think that there is the need for some kind of diplomacy through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and by extension the government. And if it has to be done through the CARICOM level for a collective view, for a greater voice, I think that the government has to be on the ball with this particular issue.
You think we should
and
open
then
up?
It comes.
Go ahead, finish your thought.
Yeah, and then it comes to the very important issue of we are going in the direction of opening up the economy.
Yeah,
And
you
we
think we
have
should
dealt
open
with
up
the,
more? We should
yes,
open,
and
right, okay. So you
this
think
will
we should
bring me
open up
to,
more? All
yes.
right, what should be the approach of vaccinated and unvaccinated workers? And what should be the
Right.
approach of
And
employers towards vaccinated and
and
unvaccinated workers?
this brings us to the very critical debate that has occurred in the public domain within the last month or so,
It's still going
whether,
on. Yeah.
and it is still going on because in terms of workplace vaccination and whether employers have the right to debar workers from entering the workplace when that particular sector is reopened or particular business was reopened. At the end of the day, it has to be balanced because, I mean, within the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago, I think Section 4 outlines the constitutional rights and freedoms that an individual has. Then, from an occupational safety and health point of view, if I could recollect, Section 6 somewhere of the Occupational Safety and Health Act indicates that it is the duty of every employer to ensure, so far as right is practicable, that the safety, health, and welfare at work of all of its employees and enabling environment is created. And at the end of the day, too, there is no law at the moment in Trinidad and Tobago where vaccination is mandatory in the country as a result of a law that has been enacted by the parliament of the country. The government has made it clear through the Prime Minister that at this point in time, vaccination is not mandatory. And this is where the government should have stepped in again months ago and try and work out a workplace vaccination policy where it could have engaged in social dialogue with the respective trade union federation in the country, the respective business federation, the larger chamber of commerce, the smaller ones, and so on, and engaged in what I would call moral suasion, going into try and meeting with employers, their industrial relations practitioners, human resource practitioners, and so on, to engage in what we would call a moral diplomacy, suasion, encouragement, support, and so on, when the workplace reopens, so that workers too will understand the importance of becoming vaccinated in terms of not only their personal health but their family's health, and in the overall context of the workplace environment
Yeah,
and
their
what it means
colleagues.
for the longevity and the sustainability of the business entity, and by overall the economy of the country.
So you think not enough consultation has been had and that the persuasive arguments have not been properly articulated in a collective way to engage the union leadership and therefore to bring the workers on board? That is your view?
That is my view, and that is in the context of the unionized environment. What about in the non-unionized environment? What about in the informal economy and so on?
Yes.
And you see, the procurement of vaccines, the admission of the that we had the COVID virus to deal with, was something that the government clearly did not display the leadership. And again, we bungled, for example, the pandemic leave that was announced by the then Minister of Labour, Minister Jennifer Baptiste-Primus at the time. We are hearing now from the Minister of Planning about a work-from-home policy. We have not heard anything substantive about a workplace vaccination policy from the Minister of Labour. The Minister of Planning enunciated this, I think, a couple of days ago in the press. But this workplace or work from home policy that she announced in the press, has it properly been ventilated? Has it properly been discussed, because I think the major component of this society that will be impacted upon with this work from home policy will be the public sector. We have, I think, about 135,000 public sector workers in the country. What categories of workers will be earmarked to work from home? Because from a public service delivery point of view, Boy, you would know what is near and dear to people is like if they go to the licensing authority, they go to the Ministry of Legal Affairs for the birth certificate. If you go to the Ministry of National Security for your passport renewal and so on, you do not want to spend the whole day there. You want efficient delivery. If it could be dealt with it within an hour, you would want to come out of there. These offices, what categories of workers will be identified to work from home from a public service point of view? How it will be monitored? How the issue of productivity
and how it will affect the level of service to the citizen? How it will affect the level of service to the
from
citizen?
home. And
So I get the impression, though, that you are saying that, look, the government comes and they announce all of these things. They haven't thought it through properly. They haven't engaged anybody in the discussion. And, you know, it's a kind of uncoordinated effort. I mean, is that what you are saying, that it really is announcements rather than plans to be executed?
It is announcements. It clearly shows a vacuum in terms of leadership and decisive leadership on the part of the Prime Minister, because the Prime Minister, Dr. Rowley, is in charge of the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago. And we have had announcements without effective implementation trickling down in the society, in the wider society, and for the benefit of the workers, for the benefit of the citizens, for the benefit of the business community. So at the end of the day, it is more public relations stunts on the part of the government trying to mask their incompetence and delivery in terms of where we are with this COVID-19 pandemic, where we are going in the forthcoming year. And this is why we continue to advocate for a commission of inquiry, not only from a health point of view, but for the overall well-being of Trinidad and Tobago.
I want to go to some of the issues related to pensions, because I know that is an area that you would have an interest in, because you have an interest in workers. And I had a clip from the Minister of Finance, but I don't have enough time to play that clip and to ask you the questions. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the recommendations of the 10th annual report, which the Minister of Finance laid in Parliament. And if you could have a quick response to each of these recommendations. I am in favor of that. I am not in favor of that. So let us see what they said. They said one of the things that you could do is increase the contribution rate of workers. Are you in favor of that?
Not at this point in time.
Okay. The second thing they said is that you could reduce the pension for those retiring before 65. Are you in favor of that?
Not in favor.
Right. Minimum pension is equal to 100% of the minimum wage. Give less than the minimum wage. They are suggesting, or some percentage of it as the contribution to the worker.
I am not in favor. At the moment, 33% of the population is already living under the poverty line. And
Okay.
to deal with healthcare, education, costs and so on, persons need in this society at least a decent pension.
Okay. Increase the retirement age to 65.
That is something that has to be properly ventilated with all the stakeholders. And at the end of the day, all the recommendations, I want to ask the Minister of Finance, what has he done to widen the net of contributors to the national insurance system, and what has he done to look at the investment portfolio to grow the revenue returns from an investment point of view.
Okay.
This is a gentleman who continues to boast about the stability of the Heritage and Stabilization Fund based on how the investment returns have stabilized the fund. What are we doing for the National Insurance Fund?
Another recommendation is if you retire before 65, you get less pension. If you go to 65, you get full pension. How you feel about that?
And again, these are things that, for me, has to be properly ventilated. The minister announced a series of public consultation with all the stakeholders in Trinidad and Tobago, and we will work with the stakeholders addressing these issues as we go forward on this particular fund.
All right. I want to thank you for your clear response on some of these issues, and I want to bring before the population what you are arguing, which is that there's an investment and development strategy, if properly pursued, that can address all of these things, and that we cannot ignore that and simply focus on the pension issue as if it were a purely NIS issue. Is that correct?
Issue.
Yes.
You are correct about that, and I'm sure that we could probably devote another segment towards a discussion on this whole National Insurance Fund in terms of where it is, where it needs to go, because this is a very important fund in the context of providing social stability, not only from a pension point of view, but when workers are employed in terms of injury benefit, maternity benefits, even funeral grants and so on. You know, in this COVID environment, persons who have died
Yes, a lot of
from
people
COVID
are dying that were not expected to. That is correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
and persons
All right, I've got to close up.
I've
got to close up. I've got to close up now, Rudy, and I want to thank you for coming on the program. And I would take what you just said as a willingness to come back on my program. Is that correct? At some future point?
We in the opposition, we have always remained very amenable to the media. And we do not try to censor the media.
All right, okay. Well, I look forward to having you on another occasion. We'll try to get the Minister of Finance, of course. We'll issue an invitation to him to appear and to talk about some of these issues. We'll have a conversation with him, and we'll see how that goes. I want to thank you for coming on the program and for responding, I think, forthrightly on the pension issues and giving your perspective on the vaccination issues, the management of COVID, the opening up of the economy, the tension between vaccinated and unvaccinated workers, etc. Thank you very much, and I'll see you on another occasion. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. We are happy to have you as a listener, as a viewer on television, and we want to move now to the news with Chanel Alsuran.